You might have noticed that I dropped a news article recently, which you might be surprised of, because I don't do that often. It was all about the PCB and how they appealed the ICC's decision to award them a demerit point for the first test against England in Rawalpindi.
This is the last knot. My dad told me to say this.
If a test pitch gets 5 demerit points in a 5-year period, it can face a suspension from hosting international cricket for 12 months. That's a lot of suspension points in a short period of time, and then you only get a 12-month suspension. It's a very light slap on the wrist. But if you were running a major international cricket ground, any points would be a problem. And that's the problem for the PCB. A few months earlier, against Australia, they got another demerit point, which meant that they got 2 in 1 year. So of course it makes sense that they would try and contest it. So far the story's not that much fun. Bad pitch gets demerit points, but is nowhere near the actual 5 needed to lose its status. But here's where it gets a lot more fun. The then Pakistan Cricket Board chairman and now, I suppose, YouTuber Ramiz Rambo Raja called that Rawalpindi pitch embarrassing. So it's quite an about face for the PCB to go from saying that the pitch was embarrassing to saying, hey, hang on a minute, we shouldn't get a demerit point there. And also, that was already an about-face from Ramiz Raja, who was the same person who told commentators not to mention how flat the pitches were in the series against Australia. So for him to say that that Rawalpindi pitch wasn't up to scratch is quite a big deal. So you're not going to be shocked to know that that appeal was done after Raja was removed from that position, which is largely down to politics as much as anything else. So Najam Sethi took over as the head of the interim management committee for the PCB on December 22nd. Which was 9 days after the ICC announced their sanction. On December 26th, the PCB officially appealed the decision. And it's not the only thing that has got Raja and Sethi angry at each other. In fact, pretty much since the 22nd, they've been trading insults with each other fairly publicly. I think my favourite moment was when it was on New Year's Eve and Sethi was still sending out infographics attacking Raja and also other PCB chairmen's records. But it gets funner again, because Pakistan captain Babar Azam expressed his unhappiness with the pitch as well. And that was, of course, after Simon Doull suggested, perhaps tongue-in-cheek, that Babar Azam had been asking for flatter batting pitches. But after that Rawalpindi pitch, Babar Azam said, yes, my input was there in the preparation of the pitch, and we made it clear what we wanted, but we didn't get that because of the weather or whatever reason. We wanted a track with some turn for the spinners, Babar had said. So you now have a situation where Babar hasn't exactly said it was a terrible pitch, but he certainly didn't get the pitch that he wanted, and the PCB chairman at the time has called it embarrassing, and yet the PCB is still fighting the decision. Shall we make all this funner again? You may have forgotten which pitch was used for which test, which is fine. Because some of this happened a few weeks ago, and the test was actually last year, although I suppose that's not that long ago, but you get my point. You may have forgotten all the details. The Rawalpindi pitch against England actually had a result. And you know that the PCB is going to be using that to say, well, it can't have been that flat if they got a result. But that means that the PCB will need to talk about how England absolutely destroyed their bowlers into oblivion on day one and scored 506 runs, maybe changed cricket forever and just blew most of our minds. And that is, of course, the main reason that there was a result on that flat pitch, as someone from the ICC may mention, because England made 506 runs on day one, 657 runs in 101 overs, and then later on, England then did a shockingly low declaration, which was very friendly, and without the fast scoring in the first innings, or that very aggressive declaration, there would have been no result. And even with all that, Jack Leach had the dying light in the last moments to get a result. And the ICC might also mention that it was the most runs in a test match in 80 years. But there's one other thing that the PCB might mention, that no matter what you say about the Rawalpindi pitch against England, the Rawalpindi pitch against Australia was probably far flatter and far worse. That was a dark time for cricket. 1,200 runs for the loss of 14 wickets. And that pitch only got 1 demerit point. So are they really the same kind of bad that they both get 1 demerit point? However, when defending this Rawalpindi pitch, do you really want to bring up that the last Rawalpindi pitch was way worse and probably should have got a harsher penalty? Probably not. But the truth is that no matter how bad a pitch is, it is very, very rare for the ICC to actually give more than 1 demerit point. It occasionally happens when an pitch is unsafe, but it's not something we see a lot. And the truth is that the ICC really don't want to fine places that much, because it does anger the boards. All they want to do is make a point. That's clearly what the ICC did here. They said to Rawalpindi, you've got to fix your pitches. And for about a week and a half, the PCB were like, maybe we should. Because I think it would be very unlikely for Rawalpindi, or pretty much any test pitch in the world, to lose 5 demerit points in the space of 5 years. Especially in this case, when the problem is that the pitches are too flat. They could just juice up a couple, leave some grass on, put some water on at the last minute, whatever they need to do, and everything would be fine again. The other problem here is pretty much everything I've said and everything that the ICC does when it comes to pitches is just very subjective. There's no doubt that the ICC will rightfully argue their points, but the PCB will do their own, and it comes down to a matter of opinion. However, the PCB have already suggested that they will be using data when they come in. This is interesting because the ICC don't use any wicket data in making these decisions. And so that means that the PCB will assumably be using Hawkeye, which of course is part of the ICC's DRS. So are you starting to get what's going on here? The ICC look at a pitch and just decide based on what has happened in it and a few balls that they can remember whether the pitch is good or bad. Pakistan are coming in with actual data to say, hang on a minute, maybe this pitch wasn't as bad as you thought it was. It just happened to produce freakish results. We have 22 years of Hawkeye data on international pitches. We can tell in a moment if there is unsafe bounce on a pitch or even just balls that are massively inconsistent. The same with excess seam movement or spin, or if it is too flat or if it is too everything. Just in the last 10 years of tests, we have over 800,000 balls of data. So why is the ICC relying on the memory of the match referee? It's such a stupid system. And it also causes problems with how people see cricket in Asia and non-Asian pitches. Not to mention that the match result is always going to have a bigger say than it probably should have. That is something that could easily be fixed. And maybe the PCB using data will be the step that the ICC need to actually, I don't know, check information before they decide if a pitch is good or bad. But this entire story just feels so silly. A Pakistan political change which ended up with a PCB regime change, which is the whole reason that we're here in the first place. And then a former chairman finally doing a complete about-face and saying what we all thought about his wickets. England's record being a part of this, the fact that that match ended up being a result at all, and then it seems like the PCB will be using the ICC's data to prove that their wicket was fine, while the ICC don't use the information that they have available to them and instead just rely on a dude at the ground. It really is an entire shit show from beginning to end. You could argue that this pitch was pretty rubbish, but then so is the system, and so is the politics that brought about the appeal in the first place. It is a perfect moment of Pakistani cricket.